The Republicans tried to steal your vote, while the Democrats tried to trick you into voting for them. Both of them are part of the same coin.
That's stupid.
They both have different strategy, but their outcomes are the same, meaning that they're trying to win the black vote. And what I mean by win, that's just a veil. That's just a cover. Because again, the Democrats try to trick and fearmonger us into voting for their particular party over and over again. And we have, and we've been tricked and we've been duped. We've been bamboozled and manipulated and brainwashed into thinking that one party is better than the other. One party is racist than the other. And that's the illusion and the magic trick that they give us. But both of them are all in the pursuit of power and to do absolutely nothing for foundational Black Americans. Texas Republicans redrew the state's congressional map mid-decade, not after a consensus like it was normally done, but right in the middle of the cycle. It was engineered to hand the GOP up to 5 more seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. A federal court looked at the map and said it plainly, this is a racial gerrymander, and Texas cannot use it in the 2026 midterms.
Use your common sense.
That should have been the end of the story, no less. But the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in and temporarily allowed the map to stand while the justices sort out the case, which means a map of a federal court already flagged as racially drawn could still be in play when you go to vote next year. A court said this splits people up by race. And the highest court in the land said, run it anyway for now. That's not a technicality, ladies and gentlemen. That's the ball game. Why does this matter so much? Because a congressional district is not just squiggly lines on a map. It's a container for power. Whoever draws the lines gets to decide which votes count together and which votes get scattered to the wind. And there are 2 old tricks in this particular game. The first is called packing.
You've been bamboozled.
That's when they cram as many as black votes as they can into one single district. So your power gets wasted running up the score in one race. You were always going to win while you get erased everywhere else. See, they don't want disbursement and spread out. No, they want to group you into one particular area. So you'll win that, but you won't win the overall region. You won't win the overall state. The second is called cracking. That's when they take one black community and slice it up into 3 of the 4 pieces, then drop each piece into a different majority white district where it gets outvoted, where it gets diluted every single time. I want you to look at Houston, the 9th congressional district, a district where more than 4 in 5 residents are black or Hispanic. That got redrawn down to a bare 50.3% Hispanic majority. And that's not by accident of geography, no less. That is what you call a scalpel. You take a community that could elect its own voice to Congress and you carve it up until it can't elect anybody. You don't have the numbers, you don't have the power, but the other group that is the majority in that district does. Now, here's a part where I need everybody to slow all the way down because this did not come out of nowhere.
That law has been challenged in recent days, causing turmoil just ahead of this fall's midterm elections.
And every family across this great entire searching land will live stronger in liberty, will live more splendid in expectation, and will be prouder to be American because of the act that you have passed that I will sign today.
Nearly 61 years ago, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, a defining moment for the civil rights movement and a turning point for the nation.
Slavery is abolished in 1865. In 1870, the 15th Amendment is passed, intending to guarantee Black men the right to vote. 1920, the 19th Amendment is intended to guarantee all women the right to vote. And still, Black Americans are kept from the polls in too many places, by law, by intimidation, by violence. So one thing we can say about 1965 is that people have been waiting a very long time.
Waiting and struggling to end racial discrimination in voting, says Martha Jones, a history professor at Johns Hopkins University.
Lives were lost, lives were threatened, communities were under siege, and Americans, Black and white, right, put themselves in harm's way in order to finally set fire to the feet of Lyndon Johnson, set fire to the feet of Congress, and finally the result is a Voting Rights Act.
This is the part that we don't truly understand about politics and how powerful our vote actually is. See, they did not fully erase Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That's the heart of the 1965 law, no less. The part that says a state can draw its lines to dilute the Black vote. They did something very quiet and in some ways worse. Justice Alito wrote an opinion that raised the bar so high that to win one of these cases now, voters that are Black, voters of different colors, basically have to prove intentional discrimination. That's an official meant to do it because of the race. And when we look at this, I want you to think about how possible that is. When does a politician ever write down, I redrew this district because I wanted fewer Black voters voting? They never do that. They know better than that. So the tool Black America used for 60 years to fight rigged maps still technically exist on paper. They just file the edges down until it can barely even cut butter, so to speak. And that April ruling is the exact reason Texas felt bold enough to try this in the first place.
Damn.
Someone looked you up this morning and found nothing that was yours. The price is on the page, 907 business days, a real site, and the app to match. You keep working, we build. Day 7, you are open. Built right, kept running. Lova.dev. 2 revision rounds, a lifetime bug warranty, the whole repository. Every price here is a starting point. Small business or veteran owned, 10% off.
The court loaded the gun in the spring. The states are pulling the trigger right now. This is the cause and effect, and the timing is not by accident. Let me give you the full picture, because this is exactly where they left. And the right each hand you have, you only have half the truth. And they hope you didn't notice. See, the conservative argument goes like this. It's bipartisan, or it's partisan, not racial. They'll tell you Republicans drew these maps to beat Democrats, not to target Black people. And they'll point to a 2019 Supreme Court case, Rucho versus Common Cause, where the court ruled that the federal judges can't touch partisan gerrymandering at all. They stated that we're not going after Black voters. We're going after Democrats.
Damn!
And that happens to be legal. And I want you to think about that, because up until a couple of years ago, majority of Black people who voted Democrat, over 85%. So if you had 10 people, we're talking about 8 to 9 Black Americans will vote for the Democratic Party, and only 1 to 2, depending on the region, the district, and even federal, they will vote for conservative. Here's a crack in this clean little argument. When your entire strategy for beating Democrats runs straight through cracking Black and brown neighborhoods in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina, then partisan and racial start looking like the same photograph with 2 different captions. And even if I turned this around.
But to think of the Voting Rights Act as an act of Congress, right, or an act of Johnson's pen is to, in essence, erase the blood from the page. And there is a lot of blood in that story.
That story continues. Late last month, the Supreme Court ruled it was illegal for lawmakers in Louisiana to create a new majority Black congressional district. The 6-3 decision, split along ideological lines, has enormous implications for who will wield power, and it will make it far more difficult for districts drawn on racial lines to survive.
Let's be clear. Once the Supreme Court rules, it's a final judgment of the highest court of the land.
This past week, Congressman Cleo Fields of Louisiana, a Democrat whose district will be affected, sounded the alarm.
The real issue is whether or not a person who looks like me will have the opportunity to serve in Congress. And that's what that fight has always been about.
The Supreme Court's decision was the culmination of years of rulings made by the conservative majority under Chief Justice John Roberts, saying race-conscious policies in education, the workplace, and in voting are unconstitutional.
Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clarence Thomas, the only black guy in the Supreme Court. If you knew about his life, if you read his book or listened to his documentary, you would now know that he's just a white man in black skin. And that's not me denigrating. That is my opinion of the documentary that I read and things that I read about him and his decision making and how he thinks. Because I'm not here to curry water for anybody. Here's what liberal media won't lead with. Because I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. I'm not an independent. I'm here for the truth. The Democrats did the same thing in reverse. California passed Proposition 50 back in November 2025, and they will state that they did that because of the Republicans. And it threw out their own independent citizens commission map to redraw the state and net Democrats up to 5 seats. So both parties are treating your neighborhood like a poker chip in a game you're not even sitting at. See, here's the difference that nobody wants to really say out loud. When the GOP does it across the South, it specifically dismantles black voting power that took generations of blood and marching and people getting maimed and killed and unalived and all sorts of things that we know of the atrocities that happened to our people. But if I put this in real terms, on the ground in your life, across at least 6 states that redrew maps this cycle, black communities that used to be joined together are now chopped apart and folded into majority white districts. What does that actually cost you? Because what does that mean to me? Well, if you vote, you vote. If you don't, you don't. And you'll use some of the Michelle Obama terms. If you don't vote, you don't have a voice, and we need to be represented. But this is much, much, much bigger than that. I want you to picture gerrymander as if you had a core nucleus, you had a large population of black people in one particular area that was stretched across 10 miles. And that was one district. And that one district will vote in usually the Democrat that they wanted based upon whatever that Democrat influenced them or manipulated them of what they were going to do for them. So the Republicans say, you know what, in order to break up the amount of power that the black vote has in this district, we're going to run a district line. We're going to run gerrymandering tactics to split up this black community and their vote just by lines, not moving people around. No, that's the old way. Make people scatter by redlining them and building bridges and towns and lakes and highways and streets through their neighborhoods to split them up. No, they just do it on a map. And they split up that neighborhood that was 10 miles into 3.3 or 3.31 sections. So now that black vote is diluted 3 times, not just having a whole. So hopefully you understand that analogy, because a representative who has the answer to your community because your community can actually put them in office or throw them out, take that away, and your congressman or woman never has to return your call, never has to show up to your town because you're no longer the majority.
Wake up, nigga.
That's why they gerrymander. That's why they split it up, because the math is fixed before the first campaign sign ever goes in the yard. And understand that a wild position that leaves us in Black America is sitting on $2.1 trillion in buying power.
Yeah, baby.
2.1 trillion. We're not a small or poor people in this country, but buying power without political power is just a wallet with no vote attached to it, money that businesses chase and politicians ignore. The redraw is designed to keep it exactly the way that they want it. Spend all you want. Just don't you dare organize a seat.
From a conservative perspective, what does this decision mean, not only in terms of the law, but for American democracy?
I think this is one of a series of, frankly, good decisions by the court that is saying racial discrimination is wrong.
But many Black Americans I've spoken to in the South, they say they don't see how this is played out as racial discrimination, but an ability to have representation.
Yeah, well, I think they're taking the wrong view of that.
You know, when I view these segments and these news and these people, if you have a majority Black district, again, let's use the example I was first explaining. You have 10 miles. Within that 10-mile radius, you have majority of Black Americans. And again, they don't separate us by physical means, but they do it by political means. And within that 10 miles, they will usually vote in someone who represents their values and the things that they want in their neighborhoods, in their areas, within their communities. And so the Republicans come in and say, oh, this is racial. Now, we all know this, that majority of people, racially bounded, typically live around people that look like them. White people tend to live around white people. Asians tend to live around Asians. Blacks tend to live around Blacks. Native Americans tend to live around Native Americans. And Hispanics tend to live around Hispanics. But we understand how the Democrats become in power. We understand how they get their powerful positions is because of the Black vote. So how do the Republicans disperse that? How do the Republicans pull the chair from under the table, so to speak? They divide those districts. They gerrymander.
Veteran conservative lawyer appointed to the Federal Election Commission by President George W. Bush. Von Spakovsky's views are aligned with the recent majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, which says that using race to draw election maps is unnecessary and unconstitutional, but that using politics to do so is just fine.
That's part of what the Supreme Court has called the hurly-burly of politics.
What is the hurly-burly of politics?
The hurly-burly of politics is that we have basically an open market where people compete with what their ideas should be. But anybody who thinks we're ever going to get gerrymandering, partisan gerrymandering entirely out, that's just not going to happen. We've had it since Elbridge Gerry, the governor in Massachusetts, did it in the early 1800s. That's where the name for it comes from.
Wow. They tell us that the answer to everything is just vote. Vote harder, vote bluer, vote redder. And listen, voting matters. Don't get me wrong. Don't you ever let me catch you sitting at home on election day unless you're like me, where there's nothing on the table for foundational Black Americans. Then, as some of you already know, and some of you already said to yourself, I'm just wasting my damn time. But the older I get, the wiser I get, no less. That doesn't just mean go and vote for the darn Democrats. It don't just mean go and vote for the darn conservatives, and let alone vote for a party that never really wins, is the independents. But you have to get some understanding. The game that's being run on us, the people drawing these maps are betting that we'll pour every ounce of energy into one Tuesday in November while they quietly win the whole war basically within 6 months, early at the drawing board. This is not democracy breaking down by accident, but this is the republic standing up. Because again, the illusion, the hallucination that they have us to live in is that we live in a democracy. I want you guys to look up democracy. And then I want you to look up republic, because according to the Constitution, this is in fact a republic. But nevertheless, this is a strategy. And the strategy works best when we're not paying attention. That's why this story doesn't trend. It doesn't get the breaking news. It doesn't even get the panic music. It doesn't blow up on your timeline because on the surface it's boring. Lines on a map, court dockets, legal footnotes, but boring is precisely the disguise they wear to get away with it all. The loud stuff distracts you, does it not? The quiet stuff robs you. So what do we do? And what do we actually do about it? Number one, we need to watch the Supreme Court's final ruling on the Texas map, if you live in Texas, or let alone, if they bless a map a lower court already called a racial gerrymander, that's a signal to every state in the South to do the same thing. And it locks the game for a decade. Number two, pay attention to your own state legislator, because these maps are drawn at the state level, and those state races are the ones that nobody covers and barely anybody votes in. That's the room where it happens. Number three, the census. The next full redraw runs off the 2030 count. And if our communities get undercounted, we lose seats before a single line is even drawn. So every head has to be counted. And number four, get local, your school board, your city council, your county admission, your state rep. Those are the seats gerrymandering can't fully reach. And that's where things get real. Real touchable power still lives. So yes, register, but don't just guard the ballot box, guard the map, because that's where they're actually coming for you at.
In the wake of the ruling, many Republican-controlled states are rushing to change their maps this year and give the GOP, which holds a narrow majority in the U.S. House, a better shot at keeping it in November. This past Thursday, amid outrage and protests, Tennessee's Republican governor signed a new map into law that critics fear will dilute the voting power of the state's black citizens.
What happens if a consequence of this decision is fewer black members of Congress?
Well, if they want to get someone elected, if they affiliate with the Republican Party, black candidates will get elected. We've seen
so
that.
They have to become a Republican in some of these red states to have a chance of winning?
The point of our Constitution and the Voting Rights Act is that everyone is guaranteed an equal opportunity to vote. They are not guaranteed success.
Not to be disrespectful, but this no-lip bastard just basically told us the truth. He said, what happens when blacks basically don't have representation? And he like, hey, you come over to the Republican Party, and if you coon just enough, if you be a Uncle Tom, if you be a Sambo just enough, then we have voted black congressional conservatives into office. And this is not about me choosing a side, because I don't.
Pause.
My one foundational hallmark when it comes to voting, ladies and gentlemen, is policy over party. If the Democrats have better policies for you, your family, your community, and your people at a broader scope, then go with that particular party. Go with the Democrats. Go with the Republicans. Again, policy over party. See, these stories may look separate, but they're all connected by one thing: power. Who has it, who abuses it, who gets protected. All of these things matter, no less. They all do. And most importantly, who pays the price? And that's why we're going to keep watching these stories very closely, especially the ones the national media tries to skip over. So with that being said, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching, we do this with hate or love, hit that subscribe button so you can continue to build on love, or you can continue to increase your hate. And share the video with somebody who needs to hear the truth behind all these bogus and lying politicians on both sides in the headlines.